Tom Izzo has Michigan State back in the Final Four, despite some controversy after Izzo got into it with one of his players during round one of the tourney. Well, now a Final Four-bound coach. In the women's bracket, Gino Auriemma has weighed in, lamenting the difficulties of coaching today's athletes, explaining, quote, "The majority of coaches in America are afraid of their players. The NCAA, the athletic directors, and society has made them afraid of their players. Every article you read, this guy's a bully, this woman's a bully, this guy went over the line, this woman was inappropriate. Yet the players get off scot-free and everything. They can do whatever they want." I think Gino Auriemma is one of the few guys that can get away with saying these things. Because I think if it was a coach of a men's sport, there'd be a lot more blowback. But I also think what Gino is saying, really, if you boiled it down, if he really got totally honest, is coaches are afraid of the media because there's virtually no context around any of these stories that get spun out about a coach and interactions with a player. And they're justifiably scared that if an athlete makes any accusation, the media is going to take it verbatim, put no context around it. And so I agree with him. I do believe coaches are scared. They're scared of the media and they're scared of their players.
I agree to a degree. I think it's more so that they're not so much scared of the players, but they understand the reality of what players provide for them. Meaning, if I don't get these group of players or this particular player that everybody is high on that I should be winning with, if they don't produce wins, then my job is at stake. I'm at risk. And so I think that's the reality that they live in. But when you look at coaches like we saw with Tom Izzo, I play with a coach, Mike Zimmer, who he doesn't care who you are. He's going to tell you what's real. And I think that's the main issue. A lot of these players, it doesn't matter what sport, they tell you, I just want you to be real with me. I just want you to be honest with me. But they don't really want what's real, because what's real is what we saw Tom Izzo do during the game. But did it affect the team? No. Why? Because it's a culture. It's like parenting. The way I parent, I'm going to be different some days, but the morals on what I stand on are going to be that. Now, I may have to handle you a little differently from time to time, but you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Coaches are afraid of losing their jobs. Now, whether it's the media or it's the AD or it's not getting the players or it's the parents with the players, it's all of that. And the fact is that they don't have the backing. I blame the schools at the college level of not giving them the backing to be able to say, run the program the right way, make demands on players, we have your back, and if you lose out on a great talent, we'll live with that because we want the program run a particular way. It's not done that. They are based on winning and losing. So they're thinking, I've got to hedge my bets. I've got to kowtow to players. And a guy like Gino can get away with it in the college game because their success, his doesn't have to worry about recruiting. People are dying to go play for their program. A men's coach wouldn't be able to do that because there are a lot of other options. But I agree 100%. I agree in that it still comes back to the coaches. I would rather do it my way and live or die with that, as opposed to having to turn the cheek and not do things the way I would want to do it, to allow people to get away with things. You make that choice as a coach, then you have to live with it.
I got a lot of respect for Gino because I can imagine how hard it is to discipline women and not offend nobody. I'm pretty sure that's pretty hard and be great at it. He's been great for a long time. So I know his job is even harder than coaching men because you can offend men and get away with it. You can't offend a woman and get away with it. So I applaud him for the job he's been doing. You have to be a coach like Greg Popovich. I think that's the reason why I had a long career. You have to have a coach that can come to you and make it clear that he cares more about you as a player, as a person than a player. I had a conversation with Pop, and when I first met him, the conversation was direct. It was about things that had nothing to do with basketball, things in my life that I need to fix. By him coming at me like that, it's easy to respect him because when he come at me like that, he goes straight to practice. And when Tim Duncan, your best player, makes a mistake, he's screaming at him like he was screaming at the guy at the end of the bench. That's how you have to be coached. Great coaches do that. If you look at all the great coaches, they coach the star player just like the worst player on the team. Yeah. That's all the great coaches. You can't stand today and critique a coach like Izzo after all the years he's been great because he's been doing it the right way. They're doing it the right way for a reason, and they're great for a reason.
Ultimately, it's this. If a coach is trying to make me or you better, how he does it, we can look at it from the outside and judge that and go, oh, hey, that's too much or that's too loud or whatever. It's a matter of what's the motive. If he's yelling at me because he's frustrated and he thinks he's going to lose his job and he's worried about all kinds of other things and he's taking it out on me, that's a different deal. With Izzo, for the example, with Aaron Henry, yeah, he yelled at the kid. They went back and forth. And then he played the kid. And when it came down to winning the game, he gave the kid the ball and gave him an opportunity as a freshman.
Right.
To me, I have no problem with what Tom Izzo did.
Let me ask this question. I'm from Indiana, and I'm 50 years old. I was a kid in Bobby Knight's heyday. And my first job out of college was in Bloomington, Indiana. I worked for Bobby Knight's best friend, Bob Hamill, was the sports editor. Bob Knight couldn't exist today. He would be demonized and run out of the game and portrayed as evil. Those of us from Indiana would say the guy was a brutal coach. He was like a military, Marine drill instructor. If you look at the results, pretty damn good. I'm not just talking about winning and losing. I'm talking about kids going to class, turning out guys like Isaiah Thomas and things like that. Everybody knew what they were signing up for with Bob Knight. And so if you're a guy that couldn't deal with that, you wouldn't go. But I don't think he could exist today. He would be demonized as evil, and I'm not sure if that's the right.
Was Bobby Knight the same coach at the end of his run that he was at the beginning?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think at the beginning of his run, he was even more brutal.
Okay, but there were instances and there were incidents that happened with Bobby that colored the image of him. That had nothing, throwing the chair, doing things that have nothing to do with coaching.
Right.
He created an image of himself that undercut him, yelling at kids and demanding of them and all that. He coached Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas thinks the world of him. I'm good with all that. It's all the extraneous stuff in today's world with the media that you can't get away with because now people are going to look at you in a different way.
Great point, Rick. All right, before we go, I'd like to challenge Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. Yesterday, in a story published by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Tomlin expressed disappointment with where the NFL stands in terms of employing black coaches. Tomlin is just one of 3 black head coaches in the NFL today. The Chargers' Anthony Lynn and the Dolphins' Brian Flores are the others. Tomlin told the Post-Gazette, quote, "I think the numbers speak for themselves in that regard. It was a disappointing hiring cycle for someone who watches it like I do, knowing some of the deserving men I do who I thought should have gotten an opportunity and didn't. But we'll continue to work and fight for equality and opportunity." Tomlin went on to suggest that the lack of diversity in NFL coaching has to be fixed at a grassroots level, and the young black coaches must be cultivated. He suggested that the NFL is in love with offensive-minded coaches and that black coaches are often advised to coach on the defensive side of the ball, as he was early in his career. There is some truth in Tomlin's point, but there are larger truths that Tomlin avoids. As the Steelers head coach for the past 12 years and the 3rd longest tenured coach in the NFL after Bill Belichick and Sean Payton, Tomlin has been in position to do more for black coaches than virtually anybody in football. Head coaches create coaching trees that bear fruit. No fruit has grown from Tomlin's tree. Bruce Arians is the lone Tomlin assistant to land a head coaching job. Arians, like all of Tomlin's coordinators, is white. In fact, Arians was on the Steelers coaching staff before Tomlin was named the head coach. Furthermore, Arians' coaching tree produced Todd Bowles, a black head coach for the New York Jets. Has Tomlin used the power he's gleaned from winning the Super Bowl and appearing in the second one to empower coaches who look like him? Tony Dungy did. Tony Dungy's tree produced Herm Edwards, Lovie Smith, Jim Caldwell, Leslie Frazier, and wait for it, Mike Tomlin. Hell, Bill Belichick has produced twice as many black head coaches as Mike Tomlin. Success is the best creator of opportunity. Too often we think complaining creates opportunities. It doesn't. It creates a reputation for constant complaining. I want to challenge Mike Tomlin to be highly successful again. The last time he won a Super Bowl, Jim Caldwell, Mike Singletary, and Raheem Morris all landed head coaching jobs.